It's always great fun to watch a movie and suddenly notice an actor you had no earthly idea was actually going to be in it, typically because the actor in question wasn't yet an established brand name in their own right. Knowing that jobbing on-the-rise actors were hanging out on the periphery of a huge movie in the midst of the very A-listers they'd eventually be rubbing elbows with years later can add an unexpected rewatch value to films from years or even decades past. So with that in mind, I'm Ellie for What Culture, and here are 10 actors you had no idea were in movies. Number 10. Rami Malek, Battleship. Now, to be completely fair here, 2012's Battleship is about as forgettable as blockbusters get. A thunderously generic sci-fi action flick, albeit one that rocks a fairly star-studded cast. And while nobody's going to miss the likes of Liam Neeson, Taylor Kitsch, Alexander Skarsgård and Rihanna front and center, it's pretty shocking that a future Oscar winner appears in a hilariously throwaway role that you surely didn't catch. Rami Malek, who at the time was probably best known for his role in the Night at the Museum movies, appears a few brief moments as Lieutenant Hill, a soldier caught up in the alien invasion alongside Admiral Terrence Shane. Malek gets a few lines, but basically disappears into the scenery easily enough. And to watch him here, you'd never guess the greatness that was in store just a few years later, both winning the career-defining lead in hit TV show Mr. Robot and nabbing a Best Actor Oscar for Bohemian Rhapsody. While few have likely bothered to revisit Battleship since it came out, for those who do, Malek's shocking presence is most certainly a Leo pointing at the screen moment. Number 9. Michael Shannon, Groundhog Day. Unlike Battleship, there's a good chance you've seen comedy classic Groundhog Day a few times over the years. But even so, it's incredibly easy to miss a straight-up acting legend hidden near the end of the movie. Protagonist Phil Connors, who spends the film stuck in a time loop, has used his predicament to learn about the locals, including a couple who are due to be married that day, Debbie and Fred. Debbie has cold feet, but Phil uses his accrued knowledge from repeated interactions with Debbie to convince her to go through with it, which her eventual hubby is extremely happy about. But take a close look at Fred, and you'll see that he's played by the great Michael Shannon, who was just 19 years old at the time of shooting. Even accepting how memorable it is that Phil then gives the newlyweds WrestleMania tickets, it's easy to miss Shannon considering this is the last place most would have ever expected to see him. Number 8. Nick Offerman, Sin City. Sin City boasts such a ludicrously stacked cast that you couldn't be blamed for missing Ron Swanson himself, Nick Offerman. 4 years before he broke out with his iconic role on Parks and Recreation, Offerman played a small supporting part in Robert Rodriguez's ultra-stylish graphic novel adaptation, appearing as bumbling hitman Burt Schlub, aka Fat Man. With his bleach blonde hair, goatee, ear and nose piercings, and black leather getup, he couldn't seem much more of a far cry from the character which well and truly put him on the map. Teamed with fellow hitman Douglas Clump, aka Little Boy, the duo are a pair of verbose yet dim-witted assassins who get their asses summarily kicked by Hero Hartigan. Though Offerman already had dozens of walk-on parts to his name in the likes of The West Wing, 24, Deadwood, and Miss Congeniality 2, Armed and Fabulous, getting roughed up by Bruce Willis was surely a career benchmark at this point. Thankfully though, greater things were soon on the horizon. Number 7. Octavia Spencer, Spider-Man. Almost an entire decade before she won a Best Supporting Actress Oscar for her performance in The Help, Octavia Spencer made a fleeting appearance in a little-known movie called Spider-Man. Spencer showed up in the superhero tentpole as the check-in woman when Peter Parker registers to take part in an underground wrestling event. Spencer's character clearly doesn't fancy Peter's chances and briefly tries to talk him out of competing, though when he insists to be signed up, she drops the memorable one-liner, "You understand the NYWL is not responsible for any injury you may and probably will sustain while participating in said event." Spencer gets all of about 20 seconds of screen time, but clearly makes the most of it. And though she appeared in a number of prominent movies in the years that followed, such as Legally Blonde 2, SWAT, Bad Santa, Miss Congeniality 2, Drag Me to Hell, and Halloween 2, it wasn't until The Help that Spencer finally graduated out of character actor territory. Number 6. Nicolas Cage, Fast Times at Ridgemont High. Classic 80s sex comedy Fast Times at Ridgemont High became a launching pad for the careers of many future stars such as Sean Penn, Eric Stoltz, Forrest Whitaker, and Anthony Edwards. But there's one blink and you'll miss it role that'll drop your jaw if you do manage to spot it. Nick frickin' Cage! A 17-year-old Cage, who is still going by his birth name of Nicholas Coppola at this point, appears for mere seconds as an unnamed friend of Brad's, who works with him in a fast food restaurant and is simply credited as Brad's bud. This was just Cage's second ever movie part, and the last before he changed his surname to Cage to avoid accusations of nepotism, being the nephew of legendary filmmaker Francis Ford Coppola and all. It was the next year that Cage won his first starring role in 1983's rom-com Valley Girl, though he well and truly broke out in 1987 with acclaimed performances in both Moonstruck and Raising Arizona. That's a long way from playing a throwaway line cook just 5 years earlier. Number 5. Jeremy Allen White, Movie 43. Movie 43 may be a terrible film, but it's certainly not one easily forgotten, even if only because the caliber of its ensemble cast is basically inversely proportional to the quality of its script. The comedy anthology project was shot over numerous years and bafflingly managed to attract the likes of Halle Berry, Gerard Butler, Richard Gere, Hugh Jackman, Emma Stone, Naomi Watts, and Kate Winslet. Producer Charles B. Wessler leveraged his friendships with many A-listers to secure their involvement, combined with the promise that they'd get to play unconventional characters and only need to spend a few days shooting their parts. But amid the shockingly overqualified cast, there's also an early role for the Bear star Jeremy Allen White. White appears as a homeschooled teenage boy whose parents attempt to replicate every aspect of the high school experience for him, including hazing and awkward romantic encounters. It's arguably the funniest segment in the entire anthology, though let's be honest, the bar is in hell. All the same, seeing an extremely fresh-faced 21-year-old White pop up out of nowhere is a real hoot. Number 4. Chris Rock, Beverly Hills Cop 2. With many likely revisiting the earlier Beverly Hills Cop films following the recent release of the surprisingly good fourth movie, it surely will surprise many to see a young Chris Rock show up for a brief role in Beverly Hills Cop 2. When Axel Foley rocks up at the Playboy Mansion in a cement mixer truck, of all things, the mansion's parking valet isn't too thrilled about it, at which point Foley satiates him with a crisp $50. A 21-year-old Rock plays the valet, and even though he only gets about 15 seconds of screen time opposite Murphy, it's immediately obvious from his confident line readings that he has the sauce. But Rock didn't luck out by winning this part. He had already been working the stand-up comedy scene in New York City for several years prior, and upon seeing his act, Eddie Murphy personally mentored him and ultimately secured him his debut film role in this movie. Rock didn't have to wait too much longer for stardom to come his way either, as a stint on Saturday Night Live in the early 90s well and truly clinched it. Number 3. Melissa McCarthy, Go. Melissa McCarthy's breakout movie role was of course her Oscar-nominated performance in 2011's Bridesmaids, and prior to this she was best known for playing Sookie St. James on hit TV show Gilmore Girls. But the year before Gilmore Girls premiered, McCarthy made her feature film debut with a small but hilarious appearance in the cult classic crime comedy Go. McCarthy plays Sandra, the roommate of Jimmy, a man who lovers Adam and Zach have both been having an affair with, each unbeknownst to the other. Once they learn the truth, they show up at Jimmy's apartment and are greeted by Sandra, who is both starstruck at seeing the duo on her doorstep, them both being actors and all, and clearly relieved that the big secret is now out in the open. It's a mere minute-long role for McCarthy, but she's clearly having a blast with it, and instantly proved beyond any doubt that she had the comedic chops to go far. Number 2. Brie Larson, 13 Going on 30. Here's one that'll melt your brain just a little bit. Much-loved fantasy comedy 13 Going on 30 follows a 13-year-old girl, Jenna Rink, whose wish to become the 30-year-old version of herself is magically granted. Before the transformation occurs though, we see Jenna be tormented by her high school's commanding clique, the Six Chicks, and if you keep an eye on the members of the group, you might just spot a young future Oscar winner in the mix. Among the clan is a 13-year-old Brie Larson, credited simply as Six Chick, who, while only getting a single line of dialogue, does appear extensively in the film's pre-Jennifer Garner prologue. This revelation proved quite the surprise to the film's male lead and Larson's MCU co-star Mark Ruffalo, who only learned that a young Larson was in the movie when a journalist told him at the Avengers Endgame premiere in 2019, much to his amusement. Number 1. Aldis Hodge, Die Hard with a Vengeance. And finally, Aldis Hodge is best known for playing hacker Alec Hardison in the crime drama series Leverage, and most recently Hawkman in Black Adam. But did you know that he started out his career way back in 1995 at just 8 years of age? Hodge had a brief but memorable role in Die Hard with a Vengeance as Raymond, the younger of Zeus's two nephews, who gets chewed out by Zeus for trying to sell him him a stolen boombox. And while it was many more years before Hodge became a name talent in his own right, he recently revealed that this debut part turned out to be career-defining all the same, as Samuel L. Jackson advised his mother to get him and his brother Edwin, who also has a small part in the film, into stage acting. Hodge credits Jackson's advice with helping him hone his acting craft, and so it's entirely possible that without it, his career couldn't be where it is today.